welcome to Cultural and The Illiterate, a podcast where four friends overthink movies about cars and family. I am Jake, and I hate driving.
I am Jason, and I've been in a Gushers phase lately. Yeah, I've been eating Gushers.
Like snacks or porn?
I'm not gonna dignify that with a response. I just said that I've been eating Gushers, you goddamn fool. You don't eat pornography.
You don't?
I didn't hear the eat.
I would have eaten pornography many a time if you could.
You don't eat your own pornography?
I don't eat any goddamn pornography.
I guess I'll go next. I am Sean, and according to Matt, let me get this up for a moment. According to Matt, my name's Sean. I'm not reading that first part. But I'm a humongous coward who runs from the slightest man kiss. Why did you say man kiss?
You don't run from women kisses. You kiss your fiance, I assume.
And my hairline is only a giant widow's peak like Vegeta from Dragon Ball.
Matt left the call, so he didn't even hear all of that.
No, he left after Sean said, I'm not reading the first part.
Well, we'll do it without him if he doesn't come back. I'm not waiting. It's late. It's almost 9 o'clock. I've had a long day.
It's been a day. Matt can introduce himself when he comes back in.
We haven't recorded in a bit. Obviously, we were planning to do an episode on the holdovers. Maybe we'll get to that next year. Just busy holidays didn't work out with any of our schedules, but hopefully we'll get back on a regular every 2 weeks from now on. Because I got to bring the bit back for on air.
No,
it's been a while since we've been on a regular schedule. It's felt like 5 years. 5 years. All right. So, I guess if he doesn't show back up, we used to have another host named Matt who is disgruntled because he wanted Sean to insult himself on air, and I guess Sean didn't do that well enough.
Sean cut out a sentence of the humiliation form that he wanted him to read, so I guess he's none too pleased.
Lest we forget, the reason for him wanting me to read this is because he can't answer text.
Yeah, this is all his fault. So how you guys been? What you been up to?
Dying slowly.
I've been
This entire time it sounds like Jason's gonna say something and I can't tell if you're gonna actually give an answer.
I haven't had much going on. I've been living life.
Living life, go Birds. That's been going on.
Go Birds.
I gotta recommend Juror 2. Let's go with that. I just watched oh my god, Clint Eastwood. Sorry, I don't know why all of a sudden I couldn't think of Clint Eastwood's name. Last movie that he directed that unfortunately David fuck-ass Zaslav put straight to streaming pretty much, but it is a really good legal thriller about a murder trial with starring Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, J.K. Simmons. Really, really, really good. It's on Max, so I definitely recommend that, but I want to kind of keep it brief because there's a moment fairly early, like in the first act of the movie, where you realize what's happening, and it's kind of a cool little shit moment. But basically, it just follows a guy who is a juror in a homicide trial.
I love committing homicide.
It's funny you say that.
Sounds like the movie for me.
Really? I think you'd like it quite a bit.
I probably would, honestly. Anything with Nicholas Hoult tends to be pretty good, except for some things. There are very tiny amounts of things that I don't like that he's been in. But I always love
movies.
I always love him.
That's another fun fact. The first movie I ever saw, my first proper date with my fiance, was Warm Bodies, starring him. So he's kind of got a soft spot in my heart for that. Also, he's just a good actor.
Oh, Jake has a fiance.
Warm Bodies.
I also have a warm body.
Yeah,
that's disgusting. Ew, gross. I have a fiance.
What a gross name for a movie.
Jason, you're gross.
Okay.
I guess I have one recommendation that I meant to give earlier the last time we recorded, but I didn't. What's his name? For the filmmaker Makoto Shinkai, he's known for like Your Name and a couple of other big films, Weathering with You and what was it? Suzume was one of the more recent ones that he did. But back in the day, he used to do advertising, which sounds really weird, but I'm getting to something with this. As part of an ad that was put out for, I believe it was for future apartment buildings, like for building apartments in Japan. Uh, he was he was signed to make this short film, and it's a short film called Someone's Gaze that is about this girl growing up from being a child, but it's told from the perspective of her dying cat, which is adorable, and every time I see it, it makes me cry. I love it to death. It's weird that one of the things I can recommend on here is an ad for something, but I love it, and it's only like a 10-minute thing, I think, or like 10, it's like 10 to 15 minutes, I think, if I remember correctly, on YouTube that you can find anywhere. It's really, really sweet, so I highly recommend it. As a writer, he knows how to do good emotional stories, so I will recommend Makoto Shinkai as well in his films.
If you didn't catch our last episode, we are going to be covering the Fast and Furious franchise from this point on for the foreseeable future, at least till we're caught up on it. But starting with we're going in release order for anybody with that question, because if you do not know, there is a surprisingly weird timeline and chronology for the Fast movies, which we'll get more into as it comes up, because it's really silly and fun. But yeah, so we're starting with The Fast and the Furious, originally released June 22nd, 2001, starring Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor, Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto, Michelle Rodriguez as Letty Ortiz, Jordana Brewster as Mia Toretto, Rick Yoon as Johnny Tran, Chad Lindbergh as Jesse, Matt Scholes as Vince. It was written by Gary Scott Thompson, Eric Bergquist, and David Ayer, directed by Rob Cohen, and shot by Erickson Core, which is a good name. Also, welcome back to the call, Matt.
Yay!
After that genuine answer, I honestly thought it would be hilarious if I actually legitimately bailed. I'm gonna be honest. I honestly thought about it for a second.
I love the way Matt thinks, man.
I guess I got to make a group chat without Matt for future episodes.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Well, if you're quitting, if you quit, do it on air so that it's drama.
Also, I will be
You're the one
listening
who
to
always
this
said we should
record.
start fake beef to get us more listens.
Sure, I'll be the
What's
Judas
your
of the
idea?
call. I'll be the Judas. Fuck it.
The Judas. Who's Jesus?
Also,
then?
I will listen to this episode and to see if Sean said it or not. And if it hasn't, then I will quit.
Is Sean Jesus then? If you're Judas,
Yes.
Matt's putting me on the Jesus Christ.
Sean is Ginger Jesus.
Yes, and I will stab him in the back.
God. Okay. Well, you didn't miss too much, but I was just gonna ask.
Sean, did you say it?
I said the second part.
Okay. It's late. I want to keep moving because Matt, you're gonna fall asleep in 15 minutes. I know who you are.
I'm actually not that tired. I'm actually very spiteful because of Sean.
What
have I done? What have I done to you?
You've done everything, Sean. You've done everything.
This is all
I have been taught that I hate you.
So I know we've all seen this movie before. But was this? I'm not positive. Is this the first Fast movie that you guys had seen?
What if we haven't seen this movie and didn't watch it?
Did you not watch the movie, Matt?
No, I did watch it. I did watch
I was gonna say, I know because I know the first part's not true. I know you've seen it before because I've watched it with you.
I've never watched this movie.
But if you
What if
had,
you've never watched it and hadn't seen it?
okay.
it.
So was this everyone's first Fast movie, and how were you introduced to these movies? Because myself, the answer is yes, and I got introduced because the Hobbs and Shaw trailers were playing at the time, and I thought that looked fun. And I got peer pressured by our friend Casey, who was like, "Jake, you gotta watch these things." So I binged them all, and now they have a very special place in my heart.
Casey told you that?
Yes, Casey
Casey?
was very insistent that I watch the Fast movies.
Casey will
And
watch
have
like a
been
Fast
for
and
a
Furious
while.
movie nowadays and be like, "Oh my god, Jake, you like these? You watch these?"
Well, that's just because Casey will shit on anything I do, no matter what, even if he agrees with it.
I should not be bringing Casey into these conversations. The less of his influence that spreads, the better for the world. Anyway, yes, I have seen Fast and Furious before. It's not my first exposure to the Fast and Furious series. The first Fast and Furious movie I actually ever seen is Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, which was very much a high note. And going on to like the other series, I kind of had to alter my expectations a bit because they are a bit different, and I do like Tokyo Drift tremendously more. But we'll get to that later. But yes, I have seen it before, and my first exposure to it was Tokyo Drift.
Now, the first Fast and Furious movie I watched technically wasn't a Fast and Furious movie, because it was Better Luck Tomorrow, which is sort of in an offhanded way connected. But other than that, this was the first one I saw. And it was because you and Jake and Sean were watching them, and I was like, I want in on this shit. And I got in on that shit.
Yeah, I guess my first same thing with Jason. The first one I saw was technically not the first Fast and Furious movie, but Better Luck Tomorrow, considering that that is technically a Fast and Furious movie, technically not, I don't know. But like, I guess that was my first introduction to it, and it was going from that versus like, I think it's funny because like Matt went in through Tokyo Drift and we went in through Better Luck Tomorrow, and I feel like those are two different spectrums to enter into the Fast and Furious movies.
Very much
Which is
so.
ironic since it's the same director, and that's actually Tokyo Drift is how Better Luck Tomorrow became Fast canon.
Which is crazy to say.
Which is kind of weird because from hearing all our origin stories, it seems like all of us have known Fast and Furious for like a long, long time. And then Jake, when did you start getting into Fast and Furious? Like what
So
year?
let me pull up when Hobbs and Shaw came out, because it was
Recent,
was
like 2018.
Let me see, 2019.
2019.
So I think it was probably 2018 that like I saw the trailers in like late 2018 would be my guess, and I was like, oh, these kind of look fun. And like I said, like I like offhand mentioned it to Casey, who had already kind of mentioned that they're like a good time before. But I the reason I kind of went with my fun fact about not liking driving was because it's car related, but I don't give a fuck about cars. I don't know anything about them. I do not own one. I hate driving. I have my license, but like as long as I can get from point A to point B, that's all that matters. So I didn't really know if these would appeal to me. And eventually I just was like, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. And I had not realized that they're just a giant soap opera with just truly obscene levels of escalation in terms of like stakes, cast size, everything. So yeah, it was around 2018, late 2018, early 2019. I binged everything to get caught up for Hobbs and Shaw. Does that answer your question?
I mean, kind of, because it just seems strange that like, well, at least for me, I've known Fast and Furious for a long, long time, but Jake is the biggest fan out of all of us.
Oh, I love it so much. Anyone who knows me knows like I could go on. I could go on for hours just talking about this entire saga.
About how it's a heist series, and then it became no, it was first, or at least always, a heist film disguised as a racing film, and then it eventually evolved into a superhero series disguised as a racing film or a heist film or spy espionage. I don't even know what they are nowadays. It's just dumb and stupid, and I kind of like it.
It's a family movie, Matt.
Family. Can I actually bounce the question back to you, Matt? Just because, like, me, Jason, I had binged all of the Fast movies, and at that point I was like, I cannot go see Casey, though who got me into it was actually in Alaska at the time, so I was not going to be able to go see the new ones with friends, and I didn't know when Casey would be back. So I was like, who wants to watch these? And got, Sean and Jason in on them. But you having seen Tokyo Drift before any of this, did you watch that as a kid? How did you get shown Tokyo Drift?
I was shown it as a kid. It was like around, I want to say like
Came out
2008.
03.
Huh?
Okay.
No,
I was
Tokyo
just saying it
Drift?
came
No,
out
it didn't.
03.
No, Tokyo Drift did not come out 03. That's
Oh,
the
you're right. No,
original
sorry.
movie.
It came out 06.
It came out
I'm sorry.
06.
Too Fast, Too Furious was 03. It's 06. My bad. My bad.
Yes. Tokyo
My
Drift
bad.
came out 06, and I
I'm a
watched it
big fan.
around. Yes, you are. I watched it around like 2008, 2009, around that time, and then from there, I actually went straight to. I then like took like a little break, and then I went straight to Fast Five a couple years later, and I'm like, oh my god, I love this movie, and then I subsequently started watching the other films as well. And then I stopped around 7, and then it was only until Jake insisted on watching the rest that I finally watched like 8, 9, and 10. And then I believe 10 is the one I saw in theaters, and the one that ended on a really bizarre cliffhanger, and it had like a bunch of meta jokes that didn't really work. And then the meme family is just, how like, oh, no, I can't say this out loud. How do I say this?
Matt's about to say slurs.
Not really.
My
What do you
cursor,
mean, not really?
my cursor is on my screen in a way that when Sean widened his eyes, it looked like he had one eye just like really bulging out of his face, and it was really funny to me.
So let's take it back from 10 to the start at 1.
Okay, so then basically at this point, family is a cliche or stereotype for the Fast and Furious movies, and Fast 10 kind of like enforced that image of it being a meme for family and Van Diesel. But you know what's like the most surprising part about this movie? I can't get into this now. I need to wait for you to actually get into dive into thoughts.
I'm gonna dive in too.
Okay, well, the original The Fast and the Furious is a pretty simple movie. It's basically just Point Break with cars. It opens with outside.
I've
It's
never
in like
seen
southern
Point
LA.
Break.
The FBI.
Explain Point Break to me now.
Explain Point Break.
So
No,
Jason.
What's
Okay, I'll
name?
explain Point Break to you right now, Jason. Point Break
Learn
is
how
like the
to
Fast and
surf?
Furious, but with surfing.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Well,
If you've
they're
seen
wet.
neither of those movies, I can't help you. So it's set in southern LA. There's a heist crew driving 3 heavily modified Honda Civics, to hijack a semi-truck carrying a bunch of DVD players along the Terminal Island Freeway. The NYPD sends Officer Brian O'Connor in undercover as part of a joint LAPD FBI task force to try to locate the crew that's been committing these thefts. Brian is investigating the Toretto's Market and Cafe, managed by Mia, the sister of notorious street racer Dominic Toretto. Dom's crew, Vince, Leon, Jesse, and Dom's girlfriend Letty arrive at the cafe while Brian is there, and Vince very quickly becomes jealous of Brian, who is flirting with Mia and picks a fight with him. Dom promptly attempts to get Brian fired from his undercover job at Harry's garage and bans him from the market. Brian then brings a modified 1995 Mitsubishi Eclipse RS. I'm really glad that this plot summary includes all these car types that I know nothing about, to a car meet, hoping to try to get in with the crew. Dom arrives in his RX-7 and initiates a race. Without any kind of credibility or cash, Brian wagers the pink slip for his car. He, Dom, and two other racers, one of which is played by Ja Rule, race, but Brian's car malfunctions and Dom wins the race. When the LAPD officers arrive to shut it down, forcing Dom to flee, Brian ends up rescuing him, helping him escape and getting in his good graces, but they inadvertently venture into the territory of a rival racing gang led by Johnny Tran and his cousin Lance. Tran and Lance destroy the Eclipse, and the two are forced to return to Dom's home on foot, while Dom reiterates that Brian still owes him a 10-second car. Pausing there for now in the plot synopsis, can we talk about the Toretto crew? Because one of the things that this does not kind of get into is the character of Jesse, who I think is kind of the heart of the movie and has he says he has ADHD in the movie. I know it's like just I don't know how the fuck that works. Anyway, he has ADHD, and they is a whiz with cars. He's very awkward. He's very innocent, all things considered. And I just wanted to kind of talk about him specifically, since he comes pretty important emotionally.
That's the one thing that I completely forgot about him, and it's just like I miss him now.
He's easily one of the best parts of the movie, I'd say. Like,
yeah.
His character in general, it does so much for the movie, even though he's not like a main character. He's so important to everything that happens, pretty much.
Kind of emblematic of how like simple this movie is. For anyone who's like not familiar with the franchise, it really does start out as simple as like there's a crew of people stealing DVD players,
which is so 2001.
Paul Walker is an undercover cop trying to figure out why. Anyway, the whole movie is like aggressively 2001, which it's funnier once the aforementioned timeline shenanigans happen. But like the music.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what's funny is I noticed that they played Area Codes by Ludacris in this song, and mind you, it was like a song coming from one of the radios in one of the cars, so it wasn't even just for the audience to hear. They were playing it, and Ludacris is in subsequent movies, so that means that Tej Parker just looks like Ludacris in these movies. He is a spitting image for Ludacris in this universe.
Correct.
Speaking of the music being 2000s-esque, and also Ja Rule being in it, being in the movie, and being on the soundtrack as well. I forgot about that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that Ja Rule was one of the racers, because that made me smile so big when I saw him on screen and remembered that Ja Rule was in this fucking movie. And he yells, "Monica!"
Oh my god, when he loses and he just goes, "Monica!"
Yeah, he realizes he's about to lose and he goes, "Monica!" Because the one lady, Monica, promised him some cookies, if you will.
It is weird to watch a Fast and Furious movie without Tyrese Gibson or Ludacris in it.
It is weird. Especially
weird.
Because, like, not to peek too far ahead, but Roman Pierce is one of my favorite, if not my favorite character in any of these movies. So, like, it does feel weird going back to the first one and none of the additional ensemble cast that we've come to know are in it. And particularly, like you said, Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris, those are such big parts of these movies. And it's like, oh shit, you almost forget that where it started, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you definitely feel their absence, because it's kind of weird talking about like Fast and Furious 1 and how much we miss a character who hasn't technically even existed yet in the series.
Yeah, like he has not even come to fruition.
Exactly. But like their presence is felt because they are the ones who kind of like take this movie to like another level of fun, I
Yeah,
would say.
because they have
Because
the back and
they have to
forth
have that
humor
energy.
and
Yeah,
the
exactly. They have that
and the
chemistry, they
vibe
have
that
that
just
energy and that
makes you want to
chemistry.
smile.
Exactly. They're very, very like comic relief characters, but who still can like hold on their own as like being, taken seriously, except for in Fast 10. But we'll get to that eventually down the line.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of people like actually in the movie, though, I do think like the core family members, obviously, like I said, Jesse's important, and Vince like kind of comes into play in later movies, but like the main part of the Fast family that you're meeting are Dom, Brian, Mia, and Letty, and I do think all of them are good in the movie. Letty and Mia aren't given as much to do as characters, but Dom in particular is kind of like the sun sun of this movie. Like everything kind of orbits around him, and obviously Vin Diesel is someone with like admittedly kind of limited acting chops, I would say, but he is very charismatic in this, and I do think he has good chemistry with Brian. I completely buy their friendship. I completely understand why Dom is someone who is respected and loved in this community, albeit a community of like 2001 Southern LA street racing I know nothing about, but it all feels very authentic.
Well, that
And
just
I
goes to show like
understand
how
like,
strong it is.
yeah,
I think,
but like, and
yeah,
sorry, what were
sorry, I
you
just
saying,
want to
man?
make a quick comment. I was just going to make a quick
Yeah,
comment
go for it.
about how even though they don't really show you or maybe even tell you exactly like what he has done for this community for him to be so beloved, what they do a good job of is convincing you that it did happen, right? Well, without like, don't be a bunch of exposition on you. Like you could definitely tell like the impact he's made on the community by just how much they love him. And you know, having a little bit of charisma also really helps at selling the fact that you are a leader of the community, you are beloved by the community, and there's like a reason why they love you so much. Yeah, like Dom's the man. Oh, I'm not okay. And one thing I want to say real quick, it's kind of weird seeing like, oh my god, it's come off so wrong. It's kind of weird saying Vin Diesel be like Hispanic or speaking Spanish, because like in the later series, like that identity just kind of goes away to the point
It's
where
not
like
as prevalent
I
to the
see like
character.
posts about like people questioning like if he's white or not. I'm like, he isn't, but like like he doesn't really have, at least currently, have a lot
Yeah,
of like chances, or he allows himself to like you know not like, how do I say that? How do I say it? But to show like that he's Hispanic, basically to
he
represent his
doesn't
heritage.
show his heritage as much. It's not as prevalent to his character.
It's so
Yeah,
yeah, it's so vague, right? You look at him and you're just like, I have no idea what race this man is. He's like one of those anomalies. But then that's
That's
not the
so.
case. That's not the case in this movie at all.
Well, fun fact, actually, though, if anyone doesn't know, Vin Diesel actually doesn't know fully what ethnicity he is. His mother's white. He never knew his father, but knows his father wasn't white. He's his stepfather who raised him is a black man, and he's just kind of never wanted to look into his ethnicity because he feels like it doesn't matter. He feels like he identifies with his father, his stepfather, he identifies with his mother, and he has like communities that he grew up in, one of
Oh,
which being like the
cool.
Hispanic community. But actually, so he literally does not know what he is.
That's cool, actually. That's even cooler. But make sure you cut everything I said out.
But yeah, so I mean, I think he needs to be a magnet because like Brian's kind of just a POV character. He's in there to be like the audience, predisposed to judging Dom like most people would be. And like I said, Mia and Letty are both interesting. They're both, I think, both Jordana Brewster and Michelle Rodriguez are good in the movie, but they don't have like a ton to do. But you do understand, like you get an overly protective brother vibe between her and Dom, and you see how that gets on her nerves. And you do get, I think, romantic sexual chemistry between Dom and Letty as well. It's one of those things. He's the most fully fleshed out character, I would say. So if he didn't work, none of it would. But for me, he absolutely works. And I think that's why the franchise is 10 deep.
It does kind of feel like it feels like they had the Dominic Toretto character first, and then like everything else, they were like, we'll figure everything else out from there.
I thought they had early 2000s first, and then everything else kind of fell into place after that.
That's just the time that they were in.
You know what else is early 2000s? Did you notice this? Like they gave LA the piss filter.
Oh
God, yes.
You think about like
the Mexico piss filter. It's the Mexico piss filter. Every time there's a place not in America is a piss filter or grayscale or blue. Some places blue too.
Blue is usually for Asian countries, I feel.
I don't remember.
Like I feel like usually if they go to like Japan and something, then it has the blue filter.
Neon.
I think it's neon, Asia. Usually everything's
that's
neon.
True. They put neon in Asia, but yeah, the piss filter for Mexico.
Yeah, I don't know. The first two notes I have down, which are like kind of apropos of nothing, are that and the fact that Brian's sandwich order at the cafe is fucking atrocious. He gets tuna on white with no crust.
With no crust. Yeah, what a sick man. First of all, if you get tuna salad, fuck you. Fuck you. Like, that is the foulest shit on the planet.
The market's kind of like a nasty ass place too. Like, I'm not ordering seafood from like if you look at like the Toretto Market and Cafe, is how bad the tuna is.
Yeah, the running joke is how bad the tuna is. He asks how the tuna is at the like very first scene, and Mia's like, it was shitty yesterday, it's gonna be shitty tomorrow, it's shitty today. And then later he's like, I like the tuna here. And they're like, bullshit, no one likes the tuna here. And it's like, so what is this freaky ass man doing? Sitting at this random ass corner cafe.
Because I know he's got a job. And
white bread with no crust, like a sick piece of shit. Like,
he's not even getting it on a hoagie roll.
Like, stay home, you sick fuck.
There's no reason he can't stake this place out and flirt with Mia while ordering a decent sandwich. Like, there's no reason.
Better. Shit, he could get like a Caesar salad and water, and it would be a better meal than that. God,
dude,
that is
even just getting the tuna salad on, which we're assuming tuna salad. He really only ever says tuna. For all we fucking know, they're just giving him tuna.
They're just slapping a piece of tuna on that bread.
Like assuming it's tuna salad, like he could have at least gotten it on like a roll or some like rye bread to add a little flavor. He gets white no crust like a fucking 5-year-old.
Yeah, that shit's bizarre. And also, he just like. I just don't buy Brian as a tuna guy. Like, I just think that's poor writing. I don't buy him as a tuna guy.
My view of Jason's least favorite part of the movie, Brian ordering tuna.
Well, anybody ordering tuna is my least favorite part of life. So.
I'm ordering tuna the next time we're all together.
I hate tuna, dude.
Does anybody have a favorite character in this movie? Or at least for me, like Jesse's my favorite character. Like he's the emotional heart of the movie. But if we're talking about like core reoccurring family, this is a Dom movie to me.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree with everything you just said.
If I'm not throwing Jesse in there, then it's Dom, because he kind of drives the rest of the movie.
It's probably sub for me.
It's probably. And Vin Diesel has always been a guilty pleasure enjoyment for me, no matter what. I don't really know what it is, but everything about him just screams somebody who I get, like, anytime I see him in a movie, it warms my heart in the worst possible way. He could be the worst actor in the world, which I don't think he is, but he's very bland at times, depending on the movie. But I'll still watch it because for whatever reason, I see Vin Diesel, I want to watch it.
It's because he just has that that chill guy energy that you just kind of gravitate towards, right? Because from everything that you hear about him and then seeing him in the theater, he doesn't really like come off as intimidating at all, or seem like, like he's a guy like you could just have a chat with, you know? I can't explain it in like words.
He
but
used to be a break dancer.
I did know that. See, that's what I'm talking about, right?
I love
Everything
that.
about him in terms of like, personal life, he just seems like a down to earth guy. And then he has that charisma that is magnetizing, but at the same time very funny. Because he could be so serious at times, especially when he talks about family.
I love one of my favorite moments and quotes from him in this is when after he and Brian race for that first time, and Brian goes, "I almost had you." He goes, "Almost had me?
Almost had me.
You never had me. You never had your car."
That's good. I thought you. For a second, I thought you were gonna say I wrote down from that same scene. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning. And I thought you were gonna say that.
That's a good one too.
That goes hard.
I think my
This
favorite
also-
line was "I smell skank."
Oh really? My actual favorite line.
It was
My
so
actual
random.
favorite line is what introduced us to one of our first. There's a lot of traditions within the family, such as, I mean, you get your first family cookout in this movie, and the tradition of whoever reaches first has to say grace. But more importantly than that is when they go to the house. Actually, where we left off in the plot, when him and Brian and Dom escape together, and Dom takes him to his house, and there's a house party going on, and he tells him, "You can have any brew you want, as long as it's a Corona."
And hands him an ice cold one.
Maybe one of the most successful product placements of all time.
And
is
it never stops.
The Toretto love of Corona.
It never stops. The whole franchise, they be drinking that Corona.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
The movie progresses with Brian delivering a decrepit MK4 Toyota Supra to Dom's garage.
Jesus Christ.
They all kind of make fun of him before they. What are you laughing at,
These
bitch?
car names. God, you know what?
They just
I'm
don't know
not
what they
into
mean.
MK4 Toyota.
I'm not a car person either, but I really want to know how they name these things. Is it like a couple people in a boardroom just being like, "What the fuck should we call this car?" And they go like,
"They have a dartboard with a bunch of random groupings of like 2 to 3 random letters, and
Let's
then
call this
another
the-
dartboard with a bunch of numbers, and they throw 2 darts, and that's what it is."
Here we have our Toyota Buttbuster 69420 XL. This is my favorite one.
And then just some kind of bullshit word that's like sounds like it would be on like a white woman's kitchen sign. Eclipse. Intrepid. Like, fuck you.
Yes. A white Bronco. Shout out OJ. So Brian pulls up with this.
Yeah, shout out to OJ.
Shout out
OJ
OJ.
didn't do it. OJ didn't do it.
Oh no. No, Matt, no.
Oh God.
I done seen it with my own 2 eyes, guys.
I know. I was there. He definitely didn't do it.
So, shout out Rob Kardashian.
Shout out to OJ.
So, 2,000, dude, 2,000 yards in a 14-game season. That's just crazy. You can do whatever you want.
All right. I actually want to talk about something that's actually on
Is
topic.
it related to O.J. Simpson killing his ex-wife?
No, it's related to him killing it on the football field. You said it. 2,000 yards, 14 games.
You were the one who brought it up, so. But I'm not going to talk about that. I want to talk about like when I was watching this movie, it just kind of like unlocked a bunch of core memories of mine because the early 2000s, I don't understand why, but like it was obsessed with car culture, especially like when it came to like movies and especially video games. Like street racing was all the craze back in the day. I have no idea why, but it was a thing. Like in arcades, there's like a racing arcade machine everywhere. It's there's racing arcade with video games everywhere. Like you can find like a whole archive of them, of like street racing or like demolition racing and like games like Need for Speed started coming up, which are now like mainstays for like the racing video games. But like holy crap, like people really enjoyed street racing back in the day. Like I don't know why. It was
Yeah,
just
you're
like
right.
always there when I was younger, and now it's kind of weird to look back on because it's just like such a of the times thing, like Tony Hawk.
You know who else
Oh,
enjoyed
Tony Hawk,
racing in the
man.
streets?
Shout out Tony Hawk.
Yeah,
Shout out
Tony Hawk's
Tony
a
Hawk.
chill guy. Tony Hawk's a chill guy.
Tony Hawk didn't do it. So
Damn.
yeah, Brian pulls up to Dom's garage with this rundown car, and they're all like roasted him, like that's not a 10-second car. But then he shows them it's got some cool engine or some shit in it, so they start restoring the car. Um, Brian meanwhile starts dating Mia and is looking into trans finances because at this point the FBI and LAPD think Johnny Tran's crew are the ones committing these heists. While investigating one of Hector's garages, Brian is discovered by Dom and Vince, but he's able to convince them that he's just researching trans gang's vehicle in prep for this big racing event that I shit you not is called Race Wars. I want to pause for a moment to talk about the fact that they thought it would be a good idea to call something Race Wars.
Excuse me, that was art.
See,
Art.
with context, with context
Speaks
it
for
makes
itself.
sense. Exactly, it makes sense.
I think even
But like,
with
Don't you
context,
they had
it's
to
don't you
know.
questionable.
don't you start
But they had to
criticizing it
know.
with your woke nonsense.
Okay, but do you also shut the fuck up, Matt?
It just without fail makes me think of that time that Vince Staples was calling into the Joe Budden podcast and said, "Hold on, it's a race war going on outside."
But you think about it, too,
He
like, the
did
main
that?
beef. No,
Yes.
Dom's crew is like generally pretty diverse, and in general, the movies like the Fast movies were like a little bit ahead of the game in that department. But when you add the fact that they're beefing with a specifically Asian gang at Race Wars, they had to know, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Dude, I mean,
not
the
a
fact that they're
great
friends
look.
with Han, maybe it gives them a pass.
They're not friends with him
Well,
yet,
they
though.
didn't name the event. I'm saying the writers. Like, how did that? I can't. Like, how many people did that have to pass through and get signed off on before someone was like, why don't we rename? Excuse me, I had to cough. The big racing event.
Maybe that's why they created
Anyway,
Han.
the race scenes are all great though.
Oh, they are.
And
Especially during
as someone who
race
doesn't care
war.
about cars,
Yeah.
Well, here's the
all the
thing:
street
you can
races are
make
well done.
cars, you can make racing exciting, right? It's not just like watching NASCAR where you have to watch a fucking speed monster go around in obnoxious circles for like I don't even know how long NASCAR races, but an obnoxiously long time. But with good editing, good sound design, you can make any car race be great and be entertaining to watch. And that's what Fast and Furious had.
I also, this is one thing I forgot to touch on. I couldn't, after everything that happens with the franchise later on, where they just go bigger and bigger and stupider in the best way possible, but like going back to this and they're like doing actually some pretty cool like realistic stunts with cars, where like the part where they're stealing the DVD players in the beginning from the truck, and they have like one of them go underneath the truck bed and just sit there and have to like the car has to keep the pace with the truck so that it doesn't hit the front or the back. I that's pretty freaking cool to see, just in general, just knowing how hard that has to be in general to do.
I mean,
So like
also,
stupid shit like that in this one where it's like real, it's real car shit.
well, also during the beginning of heist, right, when the hinge is broken, and then you see like someone actually, like Letty's holding on to like the back of the truck, and then when they cut away, you actually see someone holding on to the back of the truck while swinging. It's like a small thing, but it's still cool to see, like real stunts like that. And there is someone there who is risking their life for this movie stunt. But it's cool. Like it's real life. And it's so weird to see, like, I'm sure there's like a lot of like hidden camera stuff or like small tweaks here and there with a little bit of editing and magic. You can do anything. But there's still a noticeable amount of practical effects in this movie, especially compared to the ones later down the line.
Definitely, yeah.
I miss practical
Quality
effects.
action. Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure that's something to like kind of preview future episodes of the pod talking about as these movies progress, what our preferred action sequences are. But everything's pretty solid and enjoyable in this. The racing, the deaths.
Until they go to space.
I like them in space, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
I'm not saying it's a
So-
bad thing, but I'm just kind of saying, they kind of like, well, it's not just like over the top. The top kind of like exploded like a volcano from Pompeii.
Oh yeah, I mean, but that's one of the things that I think is like fascinating in a really fun way about this franchise as an ongoing narrative goes. You could talk to so many different people, and there's going to be people that think the newer Fast movies are trash and they've totally lost the plot of like what these movies are supposed to be about. And then you can talk to people who will like who their favorite Fast movies are like 7 and onwards and are bored by the originals or don't like the originals. And anywhere in between, like people have widely different opinions on how these movies progress, action wise, theme wise, character wise. And I think that's really fun. I enjoy almost all of them to some extent.
Everyone should be like a Godzilla fan and just sit back and enjoy the goddamn ride.
That's kind of how I take it.
Now,
That's why I love it.
if I could make Fast crossover with something, Godzilla would be interesting.
That'd be a hell of a ride. Baby.
Driving down Godzilla's back.
Can we have
No,
Kong?
can we-
Dom
Can
can
we
dap up Godzilla.
No. We need Godzilla
Give him
to
a
be part of the
Corona.
family. We need to have him be part of the family.
Oh no, he reaches in first and Godzilla has to say grace.
Exactly.
Okay. So in the process of whatever we were talking about in the plot, Brian with Dom and Vince, they come across a large number of electronic goods. Brian, who's still undercover, believes this is the evidence they need to get Tran and his crew arrested, so he reports it to his superiors, LAPD Sergeant Tanner and FBI Special Agent Bilkins. Tran's arrested, but is found to have acquired all the goods legally. An enraged Bilkins berates Tanner and Brian, and Bilkins informs Brian that truck drivers have started to arm themselves to protect against the hijackers, and notifies him that he's being given 36 hours to find the actual hijackers, who the former now believes was Dom and his crew all along. Brian and Dom attend race wars where Jesse wagers and loses his father's MK3 Volkswagen Jetta in a drag race against Tran, driving his Honda S2000. Jesse flees upon losing, resulting in a confrontation between Dom and Tran, with Tran accusing Dom of being a narc that got him arrested, and the two fight before being broken up. That evening, Brian witnesses Dom leaving with his crew to carry out the heist. Brian reveals his identity to a distraught Mia, convincing her to help him, knowing the danger that Dom, Letty, Vince, and Leon face now that the truck drivers are armed and they're heading out to hijack one. The truck driver fires on Vince, critically injuring him and running Letty off the road in the process. Brian and Mia catch up to help, but Brian is forced to reveal his identity when he calls in a medevac to save Vince's life. Dom, Mia, Letty, and Leon flee the scene before the police arrive. We got a little bit of plot left, but I kind of want to stop there just because I think this is the best part of the movie, in my opinion. Both with Jesse, the concern for Jesse, who is kind of portrayed as relatively innocent in everything, no matter how you feel about cops, no matter how you feel about Dom's crew stealing these DVD players. Jesse is a neurodivergent, person who seems to just be kind of a nice guy, not really directly involved in anything shady, and he just made a mistake and lost his dad's car, and he is in genuinely life-threatening danger with Tran. And then the confrontation ultimately of a really thrilling heist scene where they try to steal the DVD players but are thwarted by the newly armed drivers, leading to kind of the best acting in the movie, where there's not a lot being said, as it's mostly just Brian calling in the medevac, but there's like really good face acting coming from Diesel and Jordana Brewster, of the like anger and confusion and betrayal as they realize that Brian is a cop, but that they can't really do anything because it's like you kind of just have to, you're forced to trust him with Vince's life, and they just have bigger issues at the moment.
Does Vince, this is me asking in general, does Vince ever come back?
Yes, Vince is in another one of the movies. He's in, I believe, one more. You'll know it when you see it. He's in, I think, one other.
He's can't remember.
Vince is a total prick in this movie, even though he's like technically right about Brian being a narc. He's also just an asshole and really also
his
objectifies Mia.
Thinking that Brian's a narc is like he's talking to Mia while ordering tuna.
and Brian,
this bitch is ordering tuna. The tuna sucks.
I mean, I do want to kind of almost
narc behavior.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Vince is pretty misogynistic and homophobic at points too. To answer your question, Sean, is he does come back in one other movie and gets a bit of a redemption arc. You've technically seen it before, so I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything there. But that is what's interesting to me, is like when you talk to like live up to the intro of overthinking these movies. The franchise as a whole has a really complicated, kind of mixed messaging relationship with a couple of things, with law enforcement and with women. But this movie is kind of on the side of, I think it's really easy to dismiss these movies as like treating women as just eye candy. And there's certainly a lot of male gaze cinematography, especially in like establishing shots. And it's very valid to say that this script does not give Mia and Letty enough to do. I can't disagree with any of that. There are genuine issues with the movie, but also I think if you like actually kind of watch the movie, two of the things I really appreciate is that Mia and Letty do not take shit at all, and they both do operate with autonomy. Dom consistently wants to try to restrict Mia's involvement with things, and she does not listen. Dom does not treat Letty super well in this movie, and he's not like abusive or anything. He's just kind of a douche at points, and she doesn't stand for it. I think it's kind of, I do also have to give it its flowers that the women in the movie do feel like, even if they don't have a lot of prominence in the script, when they are on screen, they're their own people. They're not just only reflections of Dom or Vince or Brian.
I mean, you are right of like the objectifying a woman and then basically being there for eye candy. I can't really fault like Fast and Furious for that, or like the scriptwriters for that, because that is like what every like racing media was doing at the time. You could say like the movie Fast and Furious popularized it, but like, yeah, like it was everywhere. That was just like the thing, And I'm not trying to excuse it, but I was just trying to, give some context as to why it is there. Like you again, I'm going back to video games, but like Need for Speed. You just you watch you go to like an arcade, you play Need for Speed, an old Need for Speed arcade machine, and the first thing you see, right, when they're counting down for you to go, is a woman in very, very tiny pants with a flag and maybe like a tiny like shirt as well, telling you to like ready, set, go. It's just something of that time.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely stuff that's aged weird, and not that the more modern ones don't also have their interesting. We'll talk about those as we get to them, and like yeah, but while there's a certain level of dissonance between like these glamorized shots, kind of like it's what Matt described from Need to Speed for Speed is kind of what you're seeing here, and as you like pull up the race events and whatnot. But while that may be present, ultimately when actual characters in the movie express misogynistic or homophobic comments, which Vince does plenty, it's always treated like a bad thing. Like the fact that Dom does not seem to totally take his relationship with Letty seriously, even though he clearly cares about her. It's framed as a negative and a character flaw in him. And Vince gets put in his place when he says or does fucked up shit. It's not as cut and dry as it's pretty clear that just because it's depicting certain things, these are just realistic. Like the toxic masculinity is what would be present in 2001 South LA street racing. It just is. And it's not saying it's a good thing, but it would be really, really weird if all of these characters were just like totally respectful all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The other thing that's interesting is, again, in these movies, like Brian is your main protagonist, obviously, and he is a cop. But it's noteworthy that the ultimate conclusion of the movie, and Brian's the movie does frame it as he is betraying people that have a code and are respectable people by narking on them. And ultimately his redemption involves him leaving the FBI and letting Dom go. And it's very clearly framed. Mia, who is a moral guideline for a lot of the movie, who is a fundamentally good person, doesn't really do anything I think that you could argue as immoral, is disgusted when she finds out that Brian's actually a cop. And the movies go on to have a really interesting where they kind of become feds, and it's weird. It has, like I said, I think it's an overall kind of mixed relationship. I think somewhat due to its mainstream appeal with law enforcement. But for me personally, and if that's something that bothers someone, I can't judge them for it. But for me personally, we're talking about stuff that's so silly. I'm plenty comfortable with suspending disbelief in terms of real world policing issues.
Yeah, it is certainly.
But it's worth talking about, because this movie is definitely coded in a way of, or code is probably too subtle of a word, of Brian is in the wrong for even after you find out they are the people committing the heists. Brian is in the wrong for infiltrating their lives, getting emotionally close to them, and putting them in danger.
Yeah, agreed. And also for selling out his friends.
Yeah. It's easy even a person like Vince, who's an absolute prick for 90% of the movie, doesn't deserve to get shot with a shotgun over a DVD player. I know it's not it's a driver doing that, but it's kind of the escalation of the drivers are never actually physically harmed in any of these heists. So it is absurd in a way that's not making fun of the movie, saying it's interesting commentary that these quote unquote victimless, or at least physically victimless crimes result in these truck drivers carrying sawed-off shotguns.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any? Oh, sorry, what?
No.
Pew
pew.
Pew pew, motherfucker.
Oh. Does anyone have any thoughts on the finale though? Because I think it's a really thrilling, good time.
Yeah, it was exciting. I forgot Oh, I forgot a lot of, like, I remembered the main gist of this movie, but it has been a while since I watched it. I don't know that I've rewatched it in years, but so I didn't remember all of the details of the finale, so it was kind of fun to go back and watch it again, uh, and not quite remembering exactly how it all went. I thought it wrapped up well. It was a pretty simple movie. You know, Yeah, I think these movies are kind of like the definition of the phrase, like, it does what it says on the can. Like, these movies are called Fast and Furious, and that's what you get, man. You get explosions and fast cars and cool action, and that's what we got.
The one thing, it's the same thing for me where I kind of like forgot part. The movies that I remember the most are the ones from the most recent ones that we've watched because we're so deep into this, and I guess it's been a couple years, if not at least a year, that I've seen like the first one in so long. So it's kind of nice to go back to this and not remember every little detail, especially some of like the characters and when they come in later. Um, and so seeing the end of this and me forgetting that there was a post-credit scene, and it ending with like Brian just sitting there in the middle of the road being like, all right, I'm gonna get caught by the cops, uh, was like, this wraps up really well. And I just feel like, wow, I don't remember this ending so well. Uh, with like, they all get because it left more questions in my mind than answers, and just made me kind of want to watch more of them, knowing that there's obviously more. But I couldn't remember one. I know what happens in Too Fast, Too Furious, but like, I couldn't remember how Brian gets out of jail essentially, and I couldn't remember like how they all avoid getting, caught
Persecuted.
for their shit. So like, it just I I'm being drawn in by the soap opera again, and I can't help it. Help me.
I completely forget what happens in the Fast 2, so that's going to be quite an adventure.
To wrap up story threads, Brian arrives to arrest Dom, but the latter demands he leave in order to save Jesse before Tran's gang can get to him. Jesse arrives pleading for help, but is gunned down by Tran and Lance on motorcycles. Brian forgoes his arrest of Dom to give chase to Tran and Lance, with Dom getting into his father's 1970 Dodge Charger RT, which is the only, again, not a car person, but Dom's Charger rules. It's a car he never wanted to drive. His father died very tragically, and he felt like he shouldn't drive that car, is the really quick version of that. So he gets into it to try to avenge Jesse. During the chase, Dom runs Lance off the road before Brian accidentally kills Tran. Brian then pursues Dom, and the two agree to a quarter-mile race. One of Dom's famous lines is that he lives his life a quarter mile at a time. Over a railroad crossing, the race narrowly ends in a draw, but Dom is then T-boned by a passing truck. Instead of arresting him, Brian hands over the keys to his Supra, reminding Dom that he still owes him a 10-second car. He walks away as Dom drives off, and then in a post-credit scene, we see Dom driving through Baja California into Mexico in a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS. Earlier in the movie, he had mentioned having a dream of him and Letty on a beach in Mexico together. And that is the Fast and the Furious. Yeah, I mean, kind of like Sean said, like there is definite stakes, like there's consequences. Dom is hurt. Dom has to flee the country. Brian is going to lose his job as a cop / FBI agent and go to prison, presumably. Letty and Mia are separated from Dom. Jesse dies, and that's I think one of the reasons we all forget about Jesse is this is a franchise where a lot of people do not stay dead, but Jesse stays dead. And it's really sad because that kid is just good, and was just a kid who made a mistake and should not have been shot. I mean, does anyone have any more thoughts? I feel like we kind of talked about this already, but
No, not really. Movie good. I like
Movie
it.
good.
I like movie.
I feel like this movie, while I know it's not the top of my Fast and Furious movies, it's still like solid, good beginning. I think it's a 100% a product of its time a little bit, and that causes a lot of things to not age well. And also, I think there are just some things in here that are really questionable even for the time. But like, I don't want to say ignoring those things because I'm not, but even still with taking those things into account, I still find this to be an enjoyable movie to watch. And the franchise kind of ages up as well as the rest of the cast as the franchise continues. So you kind of get a better it gets better with time, and I feel like the rest of them age a little bit better to a degree, depending. But yeah, I feel like this one definitely, the worst part to me is just how it's aged with time. It's still like a fun watch that, and I still think again it's solid. It's just I think that its biggest issue really for me is that it just has not aged well. Or I guess if you want to look at it, it's a time capsule a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like a period piece, even though it's just made in the time it was made.
Yeah.
So technically, I think it's set after 2001 because of the weird shit that they decide to do later. But that's messy.
That's why I see it. I see it as like a period piece. Like, this is something that was made of the times, and I of course had to, like, when I watch it, I can't really like judge it like a movie made today. And like, it's kind of like how, it's like certain like exploitation films have like a cult following. It's because even though of the times it was it in like nowadays terms it could be considered offensive, other times it wasn't really like malicious in their intent. And so I feel like it gives it a little more leeway. But even then, you still have to keep in mind that, like, stuff like this isn't really acceptable today. But I could still like watch this and enjoy it as something that was made of the times and accepted that this was acceptable at the time. I feel like if you go with like that mindset, you should be fine. That's how I don't usually
Honestly,
like
I
watch
think-
old time movies or like old time cartoons, especially like.
You're honest. I was just saying, honestly, I think you're making it sound worse than it even is. Like, to me, like,
Oh no! This is not like Peter Pan levels of like
This
offensive.
it's not that.
Like, I think
It's
the
not that
jarring
bad.
moment is Vince throws out a slur pretty early on in the movie.
There
but-
was that.
and you're like a little taken aback, but you're again also supposed to be like, wow, this guy sucks. So it's not like it even remotely frames that as like funny or cool. He's just a dick.
Like, that one's not that bad. To me, it's more like the way that it like shoots, that like they film women in it. And while like there are good parts of it, by all means, I just it makes it a little weird and skeevy sometimes. And I know that it's a part of like the car culture back then too. It was still skeevy then, and it still feels skeevy now, as it should, because it's kind of gross.
Do you guys, would you say overall you recommend the movie? Do you have a favorite part? Or at least favorite other than the skeevy?
The races.
What?
The
What?
racists?
No, the races.
Oh my!
Your least favorite part?
No, my Oh, I thought you said talking about favorite parts. No.
Well, I listed a few things, but the last I said was, or if it's a least favorite other than. So it sounded like you were saying your least
Matt
favorite,
just
that you
says the
didn't like the
races are the
races and they were
worst part.
worse than the skeevy.
At
And
first,
we also all
Matt
thought you said
saying-
racist.
I thought Matt was saying the racists were the worst part, and I was like, what? And then he said the races were the worst part, and now I'm still confused.
Okay, Matt likes the races. CES. Do you recommend the movie, Matt?
Yes, I would.
I'd
My
recommend
favorite-
it too.
My favorite part is the race wars.
I was gonna say my favorite part is the race war.
Yeah, I mean, I also recommend it. Obviously, I think it's it's simple. It's a great place to jump in if you like any kind of action or to an extent crime movies. But there's some like surprisingly dynamic characters, even if some of it's a little dated.
I miss Jesse.
Overall, thumbs up. R.I.P. Jesse.
R.I.P. Jesse.
Anything else from you guys, or should we send it off with a what is that? That's a 4 for 4 on recommend.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's 4 quarter miles at a time.
4
All right.
1 whole mile.
That's a whole mile.
That's a whole
at
mile. We give it the full mile. All right. Thank you to Alofett, ALOFETT for the podcast artwork. Thank you to Jason for our podcast music.
Yes, I did the podcast music. Follow the Upsides. Hold on. The Upsides PA on Instagram. The _Upsides PA on Twitter. The Upsides on SoundCloud. Things will be up there eventually. Also, in band called Faraday. You can follow Instagram. Faraday Band PA on Instagram. I do drum.
All right. And please follow Cultural Illiterate on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to Cultural Illiterate Podcast on YouTube. Illiterate_pod is our handles for any social media we have. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Eventually I'll make other things too when I get less lazy. You can email us, culturalilliteratepod@gmail.com with questions, comments. Leave a review on podcast apps, all that. Next episode, we're covering an indie movie that we previously mentioned that's become an accepted part of the Fast and Furious canon. If you don't like this type of movie that we just talked about, check out Better Luck Tomorrow. So maybe it is totally unrelated, and we'll get into in 2 weeks we'll get into how and why this became part of the Fast story. But yeah, Better Luck Tomorrow is the episode, and we will see you then.